Hello, today we are going to talk about the problem-based learning topic. What is problem-based learning? How it's composed of? And of course, let me start by saying that this topic is really special for me because I have defended PhD thesis on problem-based learning in university. So, I'm one of the persons who is really interested in this topic. And also I am educational specialist, I'm an educational expert. Therefore the educational topics is a high priority for me. I'm very interested in educational topics. That's why I selected this topic for my PhD studies. And of course, problem-based learning is educational strategy. It is more than learning method. It could be counted as educational strategy, collaborative educational strategy, and self-directed educational strategy, where the central point of the learning is a problem, analysis of the problem, searching for information, generating of strategies and reflection of educational process itself. And problem-based learning is not very old phenomena in educational world. It is originated from Canada McMaster University in 1970s, when the famous professor Howard Barrows tried to explore new horizons for education of medical specialists. And he tried different variations of self-directed strategy where students learn in groups or in teams, analyzing certain kinds of problems. So Howard Barrows in McMaster University, Canada, tried this learning strategy, and he found out that students that apply problem-based learning in their studies are much more curious, are much more analytical, and have much better critical thinking skills. A major procedure of problem-based learning consists of very different steps of educational tasks. For instance, when it was originated in McMaster University, they had certain specific learning tasks, specific learning steps. For instance, students at first must identify the problems in the group. They explore pre-existing knowledge in group work also. They generate hypotheses and possible mechanisms. They identifying learning issues and objectives. Also, they do some self-study and research based on above defined steps. Also, they evaluate different kinds of knowledge that have been found in the search process, and they do some reflections in the groups. And Howard Barrows noticed that students that apply problem-based learning in their educational process, they foster much better clinical reasoning skills. They enhance acquisition and retention and use of knowledge in the clinical context. Also, they promote self-directed learning much better than conventional students in the classroom. Also, they increase motivations for learning. And of course, McMaster University in Canada was the first university that applied problem-based learning, according to most of scientists. They agree on that. And later, this model of problem-based learning was transferred to the other countries. And the most famous problem-based learning models are, of course, from the McMaster University, but they also were transferred to other universities in Europe. For instance, to Denmark, Aalborg University, to Holland, Maastricht University, to Sweden, Linköping University, also Denmark University Roskilde, and Finnish University Tampere. And they have the most famous problem-based learning models in the world. And of course, when you trying to transfer something original from the McMaster University, they are transferred not in equal sizes and equal models because they have certain variations with certain differences. And each of these models, McMaster, Alaborg, Maastricht, Linköping, Roskilde, Tampere, has certain differences. And for instance, in the Maastricht, they have a little bit different procedure for problem-based learning. So let me a little bit to explain. First things, what they do during the problem-based learning process, students in the Maastricht University, first they must clarify the problems. They must define the problems. They brainstorming a problem and trying to structure the problem. They formulating learning objectives. They search for the information, and finally found information are reflected, and they doing some kind of reporting. So this procedure for problem-based learning is a bit different, as you see, compared to the McMaster University, where they have a less step compared to the Maastricht problem-based learning steps, where they have almost 7 steps of problem-based learning. And of course it's interesting to observe the difference with the other universities. For instance, in Tampere University they have even different problem-based learning approach and problem-based learning procedures for solving of problems in educational process. For instance, in Tampere they have 3 major steps just in problem-based learning. For instance, the first step is engaging students with a problem, investigating facts and doing research, analyzing different kind of information. And the third phase of the problem-based learning is forming solution, testing and implementing and sharing it. So as you see, in the different universities they have different even approach to problem-based learning, but the major characteristics are very, very similar. For instance, in Roskilde University in Denmark, they have a very similar problem-based learning phenomena like project-based learning. So problem-based learning and project-based learning strategies could be said that they are merged in Roskilde University, where they not only analyzing the problem, not only implement search of information, but they also do some kind of strategies and creating certain kinds of educational products. So what is interesting within Roskilde University, that problem-based learning process is merged with project-based learning process, and they are trying to do even some real educational products during educational process. So they even, we could say, go further, because traditionally problem-based learning doesn't include doing of projects. Problem-based learning is kept more theoretical aspect of problem solving. According to some scientists, that problem-based learning is not equal to problem solving, because during the problem solvation, learners usually do something practically. In fact, in problem-based learning, they just analyzing problems, searching for information, do some problem solving insights. They are generating problem solving insights and do some reflection process during the problem-based learning. So you see that approaches to the problem-based learning is different from one university to another. So it is when I was studying problem-based learning, it was very interesting to observe those differences. And of course, when I was developing my PhD thesis, I was thinking which model to apply for me, which the most suitable model of problem-based learning for me. So actually I learned them all, but I decided to do a little bit differently even in my dissertation. So according to different analysis of the different literature sources and different models, I created my own model of problem-based learning, and it consists from the 4 major steps, 4 major components. four major educational phases. So the first step of problem-based learning that I applied in my dissertation is problem structuring. During the problem structuring phase, students work in groups. They are structuring components de- into the certain deconstructing of problem into the certain components, situational components, structural components. They develop problem solving aim, problem solving objective, problem solving success criteria. They are looking for the similar problems related to the solving problems. At the second phase, they are searching for information. In the search of information process, they are raising the questions, they are selecting the questions, they are generating information search strategies, they implement information search process, and they systemize certain found information that have been found in different kinds of informational resources. At the third phases of problem-based learning, I defined certain how to generate problem-solving strategies. They must deliver several strategies for the problem solving, and they must describe it in detailed manner. So they must do some strategical insights how to solve one or another problem based on information found during information search phase. And the last fourth step of the problem-based learning is reflections in the group reflection, when they are able to reflect their own work and reflect their own learning results. So as you see, when we do something with problem-based learning, it's always something different comparing to the other universities practice. Also, it's something different from other researchers or scientists practice. Every time you're trying to experiment something new, something more suitable for your educational context. And of course, what I found in my within my research study, of course, students from the conventional classes, from the traditional classes, experience certain difficulties in working according to this innovative learning strategy. And the most difficulties are, of course, related with the working culture in groups and teams. It's all about how they communicate, how they respond to each other, how they are active in the group, how they share information, and it implicates on much more even problems. For instance, it implicates on coordination of work in the group. It implicates of information literacy on generating strategies and even reflection, doing reflection in the group. So problem-based learning, of course, is very useful educational strategy, and it is implemented in some universities within Europe, within Canada, within the United States, within Australia, within some Asian countries, but it's still not very popular because it's very challenging. It's very challenging educational strategy that needs certain educational spaces. It needs certain pedagogical staff well trained for that, and it needs a little bit different educational policies, more open, more flexible. So problem-based learning, it seems that it has a bright future, but it needs just a little bit time to get better and to get introduced into the wider audience. That pedagogical staff, that educational politician would be familiar with the strategy, and they would accept it as a new method to educate people in the 21st century. Thank you.